Thank you to the sponsor of this video, LEGACYBOX. In the 1960s, kids often rode in cars without any real safety precautions. Children were accustomed to roaming freely in the back seat, or even in the front. Small babies often sat in seats that hooked over the bench seat, with no real straps holding them in. Cars back then weren't designed with kids' safety in mind, so no one thought twice about letting them sit between the adults or move around the car while it was moving. Remember taking a nap under the back window? It was a different time in car safety for sure, but those classic 1960s family cars still hold some of the best memories. Kids in the 60s had a diet full of sugar, and no one seemed too worried about it. Breakfast often included sugary cereals like Sugar Crisp or Sugar Pops, and snacks like Ding Dongs and Marshmallow Fluff. Soda was also a common drink, with many kids gulping down bottles of sugary pop throughout the day. Sugar was even packed into that metal lunchbox for school, with sugary treats like a pudding snack pack to go along with your bologna sandwich. Back then, there were no real guidelines for limiting sugar, so we ate lots of sweet treats. Toys in the 1960s are far from the ones offered today, and they came packed with a lot more risk. Lawn darts, for example, were sharp projectiles that could cause serious injuries, yet kids would still hurl them into the air and try to dodge them. The swing wing was basically a hula hoop for your head, and if it didn't give you a sore neck, then it probably left you with a headache. Other toys like the Thing Maker involved heating up plastic to make molds that could easily burn you, while the Six-Finger toy shot small projectiles, putting kids at risk for losing an eye. All of these toys posed a risk, but for a kid, they were a fun time. In the 60s, homes and schools were full of lead paint and asbestos, but at that time people didn't know how dangerous these materials were. Lead paint was found on walls and toys, and kids would unknowingly touch or even put them in their mouths. Asbestos, commonly found in ceiling tiles and insulation, was present in buildings everywhere too, including schools. There were no rules or warnings about exposure, so children were constantly in contact with these harmful substances. Back in the 1960s, kids would swim in just about any body of water. Some called it a swimming hole, and usually this was without any adult supervision. Whether it was a creek, pond, or river, kids would dive in, ignoring strong currents, hidden rocks, or even sometimes polluted water. Lifeguards and life jackets were not even a thought, and kids could often be found jumping off bridges or cliffs on those fun, carefree summer days. In the 60s, cigarette smoke filled homes, cars, and public spaces, and kids were constantly exposed to it. Adults smoked at the dinner table, in living rooms, and even inside cars with the windows rolled up. Nothing was off limits when it came to smoking, so whether you were in a restaurant or on a plane, you had secondhand smoke swirling around you. Back then, it seemed that everyone smoked, and it was completely normal for kids to grow up in smoke-filled environments. It also wasn't uncommon for parents to leave kids in the car while running errands, and many kids couldn't resist the urge to play with the gear shifter. Cars back then were simpler, and it didn't take much strength to move the gear into neutral. Without the parking brake set, the car would often start rolling, and parents might have to chase after the car. Rolling backwards out of a parking spot into busy traffic would scare you to death, but not nearly as bad as what your parents would do to you once they found out. Kids in the 1960s often came into contact with mercury, especially in school and sometimes at home. When thermometers broke, the shiny liquid metal inside fascinated them, and they would roll it around in their hands without knowing how toxic it was. Even in school, kids handled mercury during science experiments, and there was little concern. The lack of immediate harm made it seem safe, and parents or teachers rarely stopped kids from playing with it, completely unaware of the long-term dangers. Inspired by superheroes or characters like Mary Poppins, kids in the 1960s often attempted to fly by jumping off pretty much anything. I mean, who didn't fashion some wings or open an umbrella and jump to see if it really worked? Kids truly believed it was possible, ignoring the risks of broken bones when they hit the ground. These attempts to fly weren't just fun, but they were fueled by movies and TV shows that made flying look so real. Catholic schools in the 1960s were known for strict discipline, and many kids feared the nuns. Punishments included getting hit on the hand with a ruler, or being embarrassed in front of classmates. The punishments were about learning respect, and discipline was the ultimate goal, with parents rarely intervening, believing that these tough measures were good for building character. In the 1960s, kids often ventured into dangerous places, including down into open sewer or drainage pipes, looking for adventure. They didn't think about the risks of getting lost, trapped, or exposed to harmful bacteria. Exploring those dark, winding tunnels seemed exciting, but kids had no idea how dangerous it was. Storms could flood the sewers, leading to possible drowning, and the air inside could be filled with dangerous gases. Yet for many, the thrill of exploration outweighed any concern for safety. As a 60s kid, chemistry sets were very popular, but they came with risks that were often ignored. These sets contained real chemicals, and without gloves or goggles, kids would mix unknown substances and sometimes create small explosions, or at the very least, toxic fumes. Experimenting with these sets was seen as educational, but kids were often left unsupervised. Despite the risks, kids loved the excitement of making things bubble, fizz, or even catch fire. During the summertime, kids spent hours outside, and that meant sunburns were common. The difference here is that kids didn't wear sunscreen because it just wasn't widespread, and few parents understood the dangers of sun exposure. Most people thought a deep tan was healthy, so kids played outside for hours with no concern. There were also many products that were meant to help you get a tan faster. Coppertone's Don't Be a Paleface campaign was just one of the messages that reinforced the importance of being tan. The long-term risks of skin cancer were far from anyone's mind at the time. From the very start, the 1960s was all about looking toward the future. The space race was in full swing, and everything started to look more futuristic. The furniture took the shape of rockets, pods, and capsules, while clothing began to resemble plastic suits and matching headgear. This was a time period when every kid was drinking Tang, while watching shows like The Jetsons and becoming fascinated by the new worlds created by Star Trek and Lost in Space. In the 60s, there was Beatlemania, Batmania, and then there was Bondmania. The 007 explosion was so big that it inspired a spy craze on the big screen and the small. We got to see Dean Martin in a series of Matt Helm movies, James Coburn in Our Man Flint, plus TV shows like Get Smart, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and The Wild Wild West. People couldn't get enough of the spy gadgets, beautiful girls, and cool cars that these secret globetrotting agents had access to. So it's really no surprise the genre became such a huge part of the 1960s, especially considering the backdrop of the Cold War, with international espionage and government secrets becoming the norm. The Beatles came to America in 1964 to perform on The Ed Sullivan Show, and a record 73 million people tuned into the performance. From there, Beatlemania had officially begun. Their hairstyle, dubbed a mop top, became a popular look in the United States following their appearance on Ed Sullivan. The longish style with bangs was a dramatic departure from the very short, conservative cuts of the 1950s, and it was soon mimicked by teenagers everywhere. As a kid in the 1960s, you'd see ads for sea monkeys all the time in comic books, and you couldn't help but order the creatures. These were actually brine shrimp that were in a state of suspended animation, and they would come back to life when you added water, although they looked nothing like the sea monkeys pictured in the ads. But that didn't stop kids from spending the dollar to buy them, and the marketing ploy continued to charm kids throughout the 1960s.
Before there were legitimate hair straighteners available to buy, there were actual irons that people used on clothing. So women in the 1960s who wanted to straighten their hair used the household appliance to make it happen. Laying over an ironing board while mom ironed your hair was a pretty common scene when you wanted to rid your hair of pesky waves. The danger of burning your hair, or even your head, was a risk that these girls were willing to take to get that long, straight look. Cars in the 1960s were a big deal, and it is evident by how many people took pictures posing on the hood of their car. Confident young men and women everywhere climbed on top of the car and would pose while someone else snapped a picture. Hoods were built differently back then and could easily support someone's weight, so it made getting that classic photo possible. Speaking of cars, there was another fad that had kids piling into small cars, like a Volkswagen Beetle, just to see how many people would fit inside. Car stuffing, as it was called, was even a world record-setting competition during this time, and to make it count, all windows and doors had to be able to close completely. For most, though, car stuffing just meant you and all of your friends piling into one car to cruise up and down the main strip on a Saturday night. In 1966, a rumor began to spread that became quite the urban legend. The Beatles were on top of the world, but there were rumors swirling that Paul McCartney had died in a car accident, and the band replaced him with a look-alike. The Paul is dead conspiracy grew bigger after clues were found in various songs and album covers that alluded to his death. The White Album is famous for hearing the words "Paul is dead" when played backwards, and the Abbey Road cover was thought to show a funeral procession, but all of it was just coincidence. But were you convinced after playing the record backwards and hearing the words "Paul is dead"? If you wanted a real message from the dead in the 1960s, then you pulled out the trusty Ouija board to get answers. By lightly placing your hands on the plastic thingamajig and asking a question, you could watch as it gradually moved across the board to reveal an answer, supposedly. The 1960s were a particular high point for Ouija board use in terms of popularity, and the intrigue around supernatural beliefs continues to this day. Did you ever climb up into the back window and lay on the rear dash to take a little nap? It wasn't that uncommon to see little kids doing this in the 1960s. The cars were larger back then, and there was often a big area up against the rear window that was a perfect bunk for small children. Riding in a car was pretty much a free-for-all, with kids roaming the front seat, back seat, and pretty much any nook they could find, all without the restraints of a seatbelt to keep them in place. Airing on ABC twice a week from 1966 to 1968 was a campy version of Batman, starring Adam West in the title role and Burt Ward as a young Robin. There was also an incredible array of memorable villains, including Cesar Romero as the Joker, Frank Gorshin as the Riddler, Julie Newmar as Catwoman, and Burgess Meredith as the Penguin. This show was a sensation right from the start, getting so big so fast that the audience burned out on it pretty quickly. The wham, pow, and boom comic book style effects had kids tuning into the show at the same bat time, same bat channel, but by the third season, it was just limping along. ABC ended up canceling the show after that. Tiki culture reached a peak in the 1960s. It was inspired by the romanticized image of Polynesian culture and featured tropical drinks, Hawaiian shirts, and decor that included bamboo, palm fronds, and tiki idols. There is no doubt that movies and music played a big part in making tiki culture a theme of the 1960s. Hawaii had just become a state. Elvis was singing and acting in Blue Hawaii, and even Disneyland opened the Enchanted Tiki Room. But by the late 1960s, the style fizzled, and just like that, it became just another restaurant theme. During the 60s, there were 18 variety shows airing on 3 networks. It's safe to say that television went variety show crazy for a while. Dean Martin, Danny Kaye, Danny Thomas, and Carol Burnett were a few of the names headlining their very own variety hour. They were often goofy and had bits of comedy, music, and dancing built right in, so viewers were tuning in often to catch their favorite celebrity and all of the surprise guests that would drop in. The primetime variety format fizzled by the 1970s, and late-night talk shows took their place, but they kept some elements of the variety show era.
Turtlenecks were the epitome of understated cool in the 1960s, blending sophistication and a bit of rebellion. They were worn by intellectuals and counterculture icons, and if you wore them, they signaled that you were in tune with the shifting social landscape. Celebrities like Steve McQueen and Paul Newman gave the look a mainstream appeal, showing that it could be rugged as well as refined. Pierre Cardin was one of the popular brands during this time, but there were many other knockoffs, which made it easy for teens to jump on the trend. So if you wanted to look cool in the 60s, a turtleneck was your go-to essential. Seeing Cool Hand Luke in theaters in 1967 was a rite of passage for anyone who considered themselves part of the cultural moment. Paul Newman played a rebellious outsider, and it captivated audiences, embodying the era's anti-establishment spirit. The film's themes resonated deeply with the younger generation, and then you had the quotes, with lines like this:
"What we've got here is failure to communicate."
And quotes like this made Cool Hand Luke a benchmark of being cool. Owning a Fender Stratocaster in 1962 was like holding the key to rock and roll stardom. The sleek design and colors made it as much a visual icon as a musical one, cementing its place in music history. Guitar legends like Buddy Holly and later Jimi Hendrix brought the guitar to life, inspiring countless young musicians. The Stratocaster was used across many genres, from surf rock to blues, ensuring that anyone wielding one was taken seriously. Simply put, playing a Stratocaster guaranteed instant admiration because it was another symbol of coolness. The GE hair setter was a revolutionary gadget that made achieving glamorous, perfectly curled hair an attainable dream for women in the 1960s. Without leaving your house, you could have a big, voluminous hairstyle that became a hallmark of the 1960s. It was especially popular with those that wanted to emulate the look of First Lady Jackie Kennedy. Owning one of these devices meant you could skip going to the salon, yet still have hair that turned heads. Sunburst clocks were the pinnacle of mid-century modern design, turning a standard clock into a stunning piece of art. The bold, geometric designs reflected the 1960s obsession with space-age aesthetics, making them a perfect fit for the futuristic vibe of the era. Hanging one on your wall signaled impeccable taste, as it complemented the clean lines and innovative interiors popular at the time, making it a conversation piece when you had company over. The 64-pack of Crayola crayons with the built-in sharpener was the holy grail of school supplies in the 1960s. We all remember seeing it for the first time, and we instantly wanted it. It was crazy to think you could choose colors like burnt sienna or periwinkle and then sharpen any of them on demand. It was mind-blowing. The set of crayons offered an unmatched palette for any artist, and owning this box wasn't just about coloring. It was about standing out among your friends. It was the ultimate box of crayons, and it was on everybody's list when it came to Christmas or birthdays. The Western Electric Model 1500 was a touchtone phone that became a symbol of cutting-edge technology in the 1960s. There was no more rotary dial, just a sleek plastic case with a series of push buttons, making calling someone much easier and faster. The satisfying beep tones felt futuristic and made everyday phone calls feel cool. Being one of the first to own this phone showed that you were ahead of the technology curve and appreciated these new advancements. You were really special if you picked up the new 2500 model in 1968, which had 2 added buttons, pound and star. The Schwinn Stingray was the ultimate status symbol for any kid in the 1960s, but in 1968, Schwinn came out with something even better, the Stingray Crate. This bike was a dragster on 2 wheels, having a sweet suspension with a banana seat, high handlebars, and a sissy bar. The Crate came in flashy colors, too. There was the apple crate, the lemon peeler, and the orange crate, and they were the absolute coolest bikes in the neighborhood. They were perfect for popping wheelies or just cruising around the block. The slick rear tire and spring front fork weren't just stylish, they were cutting-edge features that set the Crate series apart. Owning one meant you had the most coveted bike on the planet. Go-go boots were a must-have fashion statement in the 1960s, embodying the mod style of the era. These boots, paired with a miniskirt, instantly elevated any outfit, making you the center of attention at parties or clubs. Go-go boots were heavily featured in TV shows and worn by stars like Nancy Sinatra, who even sang about them, and they became a cultural phenomenon. Dancing in go-go boots was a statement of confidence, and their sleek design perfectly captured the bold energy of the decade. If you wanted to be in step with all things British invasion and swinging 60s, then go-go boots were essential. English leather cologne was a defining scent for men who wanted to exude confidence and rugged sophistication in the 60s. Its bold masculine fragrance was instantly recognizable, especially with its giant wooden cap, and it sat on top of many bedroom dressers across the country. Wearing it routinely showed you had a sense of style, and young boys especially took note. They too wanted to smell like Dad. The cologne's marketing campaigns tied it to a confident, adventurous lifestyle, making it the scent of the 60s. Owning the Beatles album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band in 1967 meant you were part of a cultural revolution. The album's psychedelic cover art alone made it a centerpiece of any record collection, while the groundbreaking tracks like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds pushed the boundaries of music. It was more than just an album, it was a creative statement that celebrated experimenting. The album sparked many conversations, as it resonated deeply with the counterculture movement of the late 60s. Not to mention, it also fed into the urban legend that Paul McCartney was dead. In the 1960s, having central air conditioning was a big deal. Most people were still using fans or noisy window units to stay cool, but central air made a home feel fancy and modern. Walking into a house with cool air on a hot day felt amazing, and it showed that the family could afford such a big investment. Usually, the rumor mill would start when neighbors would see work trucks in front of the house, and they would quietly speculate about how they could afford such a luxury. Central air was also expensive when it came to monthly utility bills, so having it back in the 1960s meant you were living the good life. A 2-story house was a sure sign of success in the 1960s. While most people lived in single-story ranch homes, a house with 2 floors proved a family had extra money to spend when it came to where they lived. It also often came with special touches, like an intercom system. The extra rooms were perfect for families with multiple children, and it also gave them separate areas to entertain. 2-story homes were impressive, and they sent a clear message that size does matter. If your house happened to have 2 bathrooms in it, then you were definitely rich in the eyes of many. Most homes were originally built with just 1 bathroom, so if yours had 2, that was unbelievable. A second bathroom meant you had options, and as a parent, it also gave you a bit more privacy. There was no waiting in line in the morning, which made everyone's day start a little smoother. It was a big expense to add another bathroom, so owning a home with 1 extra was a clear sign of wealth. In the 60s, many kids shared bedrooms, so having your very own room was a big deal. It showed that you were either an only child, or that the family had enough money to buy a bigger house with more space. Kids could decorate the rooms with their own style by helping select paint colors, or adding a patterned wallpaper, which made it even more personal. Privacy and independence was something we all longed for, and having your own bedroom was the first step. Owning a dishwasher in the 1960s was definitely a sign you were rich. Washing dishes by hand took a lot of time each day, so having a dishwasher made things easier. Having modern appliances showed that you had made it, and friends and family took note. I mean, who could ignore such a shiny, beautiful machine, especially since it gave the kitchen a high-tech and fancy feel? Dishwashers were new at the time, and that means they were pricey too. Did your family have an American Express card in the 1960s? Amex was more than just a way to pay. It was a status symbol, because not everyone could get one. Honestly, most people didn't even use credit cards back then, but pulling out an Amex card in front of friends at a nice restaurant showed you were part of an elite group. It was more than just a credit card, it was a statement of success. Having a color TV in the 1960s was a huge step up from the small black and white sets of the 1950s. Color TVs were expensive and new, so not many people could afford them. And if a family had more than one TV, forget about it. They were loaded. Color TV made watching shows like The Wonderful World of Disney even more magical, and families with one were often the center of attention. Everyone on the street knew which house had a color TV, and the new owners would often invite neighbors in to check it out. A flocked Christmas tree was a holiday showstopper in the 1960s. These trees looked like they were covered in snow, which made them a luxury compared to regular trees. Placing the tree in the front window showed pride in the family's festive spirit, and it gave the neighborhood something to admire. Flocking cost extra, so the fancy tree was something that only a select number of families indulged in. In the 1960s, having two cars in the driveway was a sure sign of success. Most families at the time only had one car, so owning two meant you were doing something right. And if one of those cars just happened to be a Cadillac, you were living large, because Cadillacs were the ultimate luxury vehicle. Two cars also meant more freedom, where mom could run errands while dad went off to work. Flying on airplanes in the 1960s was a rare treat, but getting on a plane to head off on vacation was unheard of, unless you were rich. Most families would load up the family car and drive to their destinations, so flying made a big statement. Airline tickets cost a pretty penny, but it meant you could go to far-off places and not spend days driving. Maybe a flight to California to visit Disneyland, or a summer vacation down to Florida. Flying the friendly skies was truly a first-class experience back in the 1960s. Owning a copy of TV Guide in the 1960s made a small but important statement. Most people just used the newspaper for TV schedules, but TV Guide was a glossy magazine that cost extra. It was filled with more than just listings. It had articles about celebrities and upcoming shows, which made it feel special. Buying TV Guide every week showed that the family had disposable income and cared about staying current with the latest entertainment trends. Having a housekeeper in the 1960s was a clear sign of wealth. It meant the family could afford to hire someone to handle chores, freeing up time for other things. A spotless home showed that the family cared about appearances and had high standards. Guests would notice the polished look and feel of the house, which made it seem even fancier. Hiring a housekeeper wasn't common, so it instantly made a family stand out as rich. An in-ground pool in the 1960s turned any backyard into a luxury retreat. Pools were expensive to install and maintain, so not many families had them. Hosting pool parties became a way to show off this high-end feature to friends and neighbors. An in-ground pool was much fancier than the above-ground ones, making it a status symbol. It showed that the family valued fun, relaxation, and could afford to live a life of leisure. Having two living rooms in the 1960s was a sign of a big and impressive house. One room was often for family use, while the other was a formal space for entertaining guests. Some families kept the furniture in the formal living room covered with plastic to keep it looking brand new, which made the room feel even more special. This setup showed that the family had extra space and could afford to decorate it beautifully, giving the home a polished, elegant feel. Owning a riding lawnmower in the 1960s made yard work look like fun instead of a chore. These machines were expensive, so having one showed that the family could afford the best tools. Some families took it a step further and hired a gardener, which meant they didn't have to do any of the work themselves. A well-kept lawn was a sign of pride and prosperity, and having the means to maintain it so perfectly made a clear statement about wealth. Recollection Road loves to recommend LEGACYBOX because we both believe in preserving the past. If you have a cluttered closet with cherished home videos and photos that rarely see the light of day, then you need to visit legacybox.com/recollection. These irreplaceable heirlooms are rapidly fading away, and they deserve to be digitized and shared with family and friends. And right now, LEGACYBOX is offering you $9 tape transfers. The process is simple. Send in your LEGACYBOX filled with old VHS tapes, camcorder tapes, and pictures. Their team will professionally digitize everything by hand, right here in the USA. You'll get the originals returned to you, along with organized digital copies. I love LEGACYBOX because it makes all my favorite memories available anytime. I can post them on social media or pull up a slideshow on my TV, which keeps special family moments alive. Visit legacybox.com/recollection to shop their $9 tape sale. That's legacybox.com/recollection to unlock this incredible offer. Let me know in the comments if I missed anything, and make sure to check the description of this video for links to pick up a t-shirt and sign up for the newsletter. Also, don't forget to visit our friends at Horn & Hardart to save 10% on your next order. Visit hornandhardart.com/recollection. Thank you to our loyal Patreon supporters listed here. Visit patreon.com/recollectionroad to join the club.